Hi, welcome back. My name is Deb. Welcome back to my vlog, Deb Explores. If you are new to this channel, welcome. My name is Deb and I was working in Disney World for about 6 months. It was supposed to be a year, but obviously due to COVID-19, I'm not in Disney World anymore. This vlog today is not about my trips in Disney and all the fun times I've had. This is one that I've been meaning to do for a while. I have been back in the UK now for just over 2 weeks, and this is a vlog that I've been meaning to make, and I do need to make, about why I'm back in the UK and what exactly happened. So let's rewind a couple of months ago. Back in March, on the 12th of March, it was a Thursday, I was on a day off. My regular days off were Thursday and Friday, and I had met up with some of my friends to go do what we usually do, escape rooms, because I have an addiction. So we were in America's Escape Game, which is our first game of the day because you can't just do one game. So we were in this America's Escape Game Orlando. We were doing a 2-hour room, which was the Lost to Amandu, which is actually one of my favorite games, and I will do a playlist on escape rooms at some point, so if you're interested in that, then you can check that out. But until then, we were in that room, and when we came out of it, we found out that Disneyland had closed. I don't really remember how it happened. I just remember when we did come out of the escape room, either we found out online or someone there told us that Disneyland was closing. I'm pretty sure they told us that Disney was closing and we freaked out a little bit, and then they told us it was Disneyland and we were like, oh thank goodness, that's okay. It wasn't okay because I was going on a trip to LA with visiting Disneyland while I was there in a few weeks time, so I was a little bit nervous about that. I remember receiving a text when I had come out of the room telling me that Disneyland was closing, but we tried not to let it bother us. It was our day off and we went out. I think we grabbed some food somewhere, and then we went on to another escape room because we decided that was the best thing to do. So we went to Dare to Escape down in Kissimmee in Orlando. Really good escape rooms if you haven't been there. I've only done the one there. I was hoping to do more, but hopefully at some other point I'll get another chance. We did go to do the asylum, and while we were in the asylum, Disney World closed. So we came out of the asylum after escaping because we're awesome. Shaking a little, I think, because Chloe would even come to the door we went to escape from. She went out the other door because she was too scared to walk through the door that we had to put the code in. So myself and Dylan escaped through that correct door. Anyways, we escaped from there, and then the person at the desk told us that Disney was closing, had we heard? And we were like, yeah, we heard Disneyland is closing and all that, and she had said, no, Disney World is closing. You can imagine the emotions. So we didn't really hang about too long in that escape room foyer. Chloe was clearly distraught because her family, her boyfriend, her best friend were all meant to be coming out within the next week or two. I was upset because all we knew was Disney World was closing. That's all we had found out, and there was no other news and no one had contacted us. So it was just very confusing and frustrating, and I wanted to text someone to let them know, while Chloe had called her boyfriend and Dylan was calling his family in the car, and it was just very overwhelming and very frustrating, and the frustrations were only gonna get even worse. We had the next day off, didn't know too much, decided we'd do 3 escape rooms that day, which definitely took our mind off of things. I remember going into one of the escape rooms and Chloe had specifically said to the man, if you hear anything, can you say it over the tannoy, because we were in an asylum when we heard Disney was closing, and we'd like to know if there was anything that was going over the media while we were locked in that room with no idea what was happening. But luckily no more information was given, and then the next day I went into work, and that's when management were taking us into the office. Most people had been taken in one at a time, but there had only been, I think there was 4 of us left. There's myself, Julie, Chris and Haley that were all left to be spoken to, so the 4 of us agreed that we're okay going in together, so we went in together and spoke to one of our leaders. At this point, just wanted to let us know the situation. Obviously that Disney was closing, and that they intended to close for a 2-week period, reopening on April the 1st. April Fool, we didn't open. We were asked if we wanted to stay. We were given the option if we wanted to stay and wait it out for those 2 weeks, or if we wanted to terminate our contract and our program early and go home. Some people did end their contract, want to go home. They wanted to be with family, friends, loved ones during this time, which I completely understand. Because of the last 5 years of my life have been on my first program, my first CRP. I then worked on the ships, and then I reapplied and went and done another CRP. So though I do have some friends here, my closest friends, family, those that I care about are all stateside. So those that I want to be around are across the pond for me now. My job was there, my apartment was there, my life at this time of my life was all over in Florida, or in the States. So it was, there was no option for me. I didn't want to go home. I also have some bills that I wanted to pay off. One of the reasons I did go out to work in Orlando again was to be able to pay off some of my bills, which have been suspended right now, or the ability to do that really has been suspended, but we'll get there again eventually. So we were told that we would get paid, I think they thought we'd get paid an average of our hours. This changed over the days multiple times. It ended up being we got paid for the week we were scheduled, which just really frustrated me because I'd agreed to swap shifts with someone that I worked with. I'd given away my part of a shift to someone else so I could pick up their part of a shift, but they were vacationing at the time and didn't have much internet to send me that shift. So I got a really short straw and got very little hours that week. So I did struggle for a little while there because I had such a low week that week, because I'd given away a shift but never got one back in return to put my hours back up. And then the week after, because I had ADOs, which are approved days off, so like added days off that you would like, I got them approved because I was meant to be going to LA and I was so super excited, but then I never got to LA and then I never got paid for anything. Normally it wouldn't bother me because I'd know I could pick up other shifts, but I couldn't pick up shifts. So I had, I think, 2-3 days off, I think, plus my regular days off. So I only got paid for like 2 days of that, and it was a stressful time. And these are the things that people don't realize went on behind the scenes, and it's not that it's anyone's problem and no one's to blame for it in any way, but that doesn't make it any less stressful. So I was a PM server that day. I finished my PM shift, and then I was food running the day after. The PM shift was horrible. There was, ever since the closing, since the scare of COVID-19 and it becoming a lot more serious than just make sure you wash your hands that it had been previously in so many parts of the world, food running was a blessing because I actually got some money in my hands. It had been so quiet, and as a server and as a server in the States, when you rely on tips to add to your wage, it was pretty heartbreaking. And knowing what my next 2 weeks of pay were probably going to be like, I was freaking out. I think I had someone there that was helping me not freak out as much, and I really appreciate that. But when I was at work, I was stressed. And then the day after, we had no work, and I had decided I was going to go to the cinema because Onward had come out and I wanted to go see Onward. I did go see it, and I'm glad I did because the cinemas then closed the following day on the Tuesday. But I also met with Chloe that night because Chloe had decided after sleeping on it that she had decided she wasn't going to stay after all and she was going to go home. So that was just another flood of emotions because we'd gotten really close. She was one of my best friends out there while on the program, and still continues to be, but it was one thing after another, and it was just, emotions were everywhere and it was just crazy. On the 19th of March, our leaders opened up a Facebook group, deciding that was the best way to keep in touch with most of us. Most of our leaders anyway, over the whole time that Disney was opened and no one was furloughed, they contacted us weekly either by text or gave us a quick phone call to make sure that we were okay. And we had our Facebook group just for any general questions with them and to keep in touch with them. Our leaders were nothing short of fantastic throughout this. They communicated with us, they kept us in the loop, they answered whatever questions they could. We at the UK Pavilion are very blessed to have such a fantastic leadership team that care about us as cast members, and that's why I keep going back to Disney, because especially in Disney World and in the UK Pavilion, my experience has always been that our leaders and our managers care about us, and that's something that I always value in a job. A few days later, the 23rd of March, we got some housing emails. There was rumours flying about. I think the rumour mill was the worst part of this, because there were so many people saying different things and people were being told different things by different housing complexes. Nobody really knew exactly what was going on. I mean, this isn't a situation that happens every day. At one point we weren't sure if we were all going to be consolidated into one housing complex. There are 4 housing complexes that are owned by Disney Housing at the moment. Our college program, culinary, all the programs that are not the cultural representative program pretty much had all been sent home when we found out we were closing in the middle of March. So the only people that were living in the house complexes were those that basically work around the World Showcase and all your countries around the world in Epcot, and some of the culture reps that work in Animal Kingdom Lodge and in Animal Kingdom, because they too also found it difficult to be able to get home as easy as those that live domestically. I got so stressed out because some people were saying they had new people moving into their apartment. I didn't want anyone moving into my apartment. I didn't mind someone else moving into my apartment, so I had a 3-bedroom, 6-person apartment in Patterson Court, and I didn't mind another 1 person moving in, and then we'd all have a bedroom each. Because of the social distancing and everything going on, there is not 6 feet between one bed and the other bed in those rooms. On a normal circumstance, that doesn't bother me. When I'm working 5 days a week and spending the rest of my time in either Disney or other theme parks in Orlando, or escape rooms, or out with my friends, or just going to a restaurant after work or on a day off, I don't spend much time in my room. But with nothing else to be able to do, and with a stay-at-home order that was loosely introduced at that point, you were spending so much time in your apartment, and I was like, I don't want to feel suffocated with someone else near, and I don't feel comfortable with someone touching the same doorknobs that I'm touching, using the same showers and sinks and closet space, and not disinfecting properly. Everyone's different that lives in housing. Some people are tidy freaks, some people are extremely messy, some people are a bit like me that's kind of in between and relaxed in certain areas, but in some areas we just like certain things being clean. And especially with COVID-19 going on and the coronavirus, it was something that I was a bit more aware of, and I at least knew what I'd touched and what was in my room. But it turns out for my whole time there I was by myself, thankfully, and eventually they did say that no one was going to be moving complexes at all. On the 27th of March they then extended the park closure, so it was no longer going to be the 1st of April like we thought, which at this point we hadn't really thought that was going to happen anyway. It was extended all the way through until the 18th of April instead, and that was where it stayed. April the 2nd then came. It was just like a April Fool's Day that was left over that they threw in there. So my first program actually ended on April the 1st. That was when my first program ended, like a bad April Fool's joke. Then just like another bad April Fool's joke, or at least a day later, we found out that all Disney employees were being furloughed, or at least those who were non-essential. I'm not an American citizen who can just stay put in my house. I knew if something happened, it was a case of, can I stay here? Am I allowed to stay here? Can I stay with someone else that lives here? Or am I going to have to somehow find my way back to the UK in the middle of this world pandemic? Our visa means that we have to work an average of 32 hours a week, I believe it is. So if we weren't working, would that mean our hours would drop? Would that mean we could stay? Would it be waived? Would we be able to stay here? We're obviously, if we were furloughed, if we weren't getting paid, then how were we going to be able to pay for rent? How were we going to be able to pay for food? Because we weren't citizens, we didn't know if anything would happen with any grants. We obviously weren't working in the UK, so we couldn't qualify for any British grants. So I know I was very nervous about how I was going to survive. And though there's only been days in between a lot of this, it felt like so long just going from one bit of information to another, and it was only a matter of maybe a month, but it felt like years just waiting for information. There was days that went by where I just felt sick to the stomach, waiting for information of what was going to happen. So on the 6th of April we received the information that we were kind of expecting coming, but we're dreading coming at the same time, and that was the email to tell us that the cultural representative program was to be suspended, and it meant we were out of a job, essentially, more or less. The email said that Disney World would be closed indefinitely. We didn't really know when it was going to open up again, and because of that, all the cultural representative programs, those that were still there at housing at that time, would be required to leave. We had to leave housing by the 17th of April at 11 AM, and we had to be leaving the country by the 18th of April. We would also be paid until the 18th of April, and we would receive a lump sum on the 9th of April, which for most of us just helped us basically pay for a flight back home. It was then that frustrating moment of trying to get a flight. I can't even express how it felt. It was so upsetting. People messaged me before I'd even read or knew about it myself. I even put up a status on Facebook just saying that I appreciated that everyone was messaging me to ask if I was okay, if I was having to come back to the UK or what was happening with me. And I know a lot of these people meant well, but I think a lot of them thought that I'd known this for days before when I was just trying to process the news myself. I was heartbroken. I had just come out the shower and had found out with literally a towel wrapped around me, and my hair was wet because I'd washed my hair. And I remember just collapsing onto the floor and just pretty much crying on the floor for a while. Not really sure what to do. Chloe had messaged me, a few other people had messaged me, and I was just a mess. I wanted time to process it, and because the rest of the world also had found out, I wasn't having time to process it. And I understand why Disney have done it. It's so that it couldn't come to cast members and then someone release it somewhere else before Disney were ready. So they released it everywhere at the same time, and if the email took a little bit longer to come through, it took a little bit longer to come through. But from a personal point of view, it was just very frustrating and upsetting to have people message me before I'd even read or knew about it myself. You only get 1 year to do this, and it goes by so quickly, and unless you've ever done the program, I don't say this disrespectfully, but you will never understand it. It wasn't ideal that we had to travel during peak time of this pandemic, so there was a lot of cases going on. It's not the safest time to travel, but we didn't have an option. There was no choice. We couldn't stay even if there was people that were willing for us to stay with them. So I did book a flight. There's no direct flights at this point, so my flight was going from Orlando to Atlanta, Atlanta to Amsterdam, Amsterdam to Glasgow, and then my family would pick me up at the airport and drive me home from there. Most people were going to Atlanta, then Amsterdam, and then bridging off to various airports. If you live near London, you were lucky because you could probably do Orlando to Miami, Miami to Heathrow, and I envy those people so much. They got such an easy flight. What was worse was flights were being cancelled like every other minute. So my flight only days before I was flying was cancelled. I was supposed to fly on the Monday, and then I had to change it to the Wednesday it was. So I managed to get it changed. Then only a few days after that, my flight, I was sitting outside on my balcony and I discovered that my flight had been changed again. But this time it was still on the same day, but they changed my first flight from Orlando to Atlanta to a later flight, which meant then I wasn't going to make my connection to get from Atlanta to Amsterdam. So I had to call them up again. They were like, oh yeah, I understand why you won't make that. I was like, yeah, no way. So they managed to change it again. It just meant I had an earlier flight. It meant I had a 5-hour layover. But at least that flight went ahead, which was, I'm so thankful for. I didn't want to leave, but at the same time, it got to a stage where as much as I didn't want to go, I just hated the waiting about and knowing that I had to leave at some point and just wanted to be able to go. It killed me that I had to leave, but I wanted to be here and just be done with it already. Because it was just, I was now living out with suitcases and I didn't have a home anymore. I just had an empty apartment with suitcases and some random stuff everywhere. So eventually I did get on my flight. I did get back here. I'm back at my parents' right now. I have a roof over my head and I'm safe. But when I come home from places, and it used to happen to me all the time in the cruise ships, I think because it's a different climate and different weather here, even though it's sunny outside and people are walking about in shorts and t-shirts, I can't. I'm used to being really hot outside and then AC inside, whereas here it's like you have to put the heating on inside and it's cold outside, or at least for me it is. For a lot of people it isn't, for me it is. And I've just ended up with such terrible colds. My allergies flared up and then I ended up with a cold as well. And then I've spent a lot of time the past few days just in my room, feeling sorry for myself. But I just like, I went from somewhere where I was really happy and I had my life and my friends and my job, to suddenly feeling sorry for myself and ill in bed. So that's not helped at all. It's difficult not having any kind of income and not knowing what's happening with my job. I am still classed as a cast member, but it will be on a case-by-case basis if they let us go back or not. So it just depends when they decide to open, and I don't even know if Disney know that at this moment in time. I don't think anyone knows that at this moment in time. They're obviously putting things into play, but when it's going to happen, and then what happens during the times they start to open up, it's going to determine what's going to happen with us, I guess. Those of us that still have time in our visa, the contract date was September, but my visa is actually till October, because you have a month to travel, so, and sometimes people get a month extension. So they'll do it on a case-by-case basis when they open up, if we can go back out to work again. So fingers crossed that I will get to go back to work. If I don't, I probably will reapply, just to get another cultural representative program, a full one, and then I'll deal with my life. But yeah, I'm doing okay at the moment. I'm doing alright. I wake up, I play my PlayStation, I wash my hair, I shower, I occasionally go for a walk outside and realise it's cold and come straight back inside again. I spend a lot of time Skyping, and I have a quiz tonight with friends, and I could be in a much worse situation. I've suffered over the years of depression and anxiety, but right now, thanks to the people that I have around me, I'm doing really good. I'm really happy. So I have that. I am going to continue doing vlogs. If you have any ideas of things that you would like to see, then comment down below, let me know. I haven't made too many since I've been back, just because I've been feeling a bit under the weather, but on my better days, when hopefully this cold is completely gone, then I'd love to start still making vlogs for you guys, whether they're Disney related or otherwise related. But yeah, thank you all for watching. Thank you for hanging around this long if you have. If you've enjoyed the video, make sure to high five that little like button, hit subscribe down below, and I will see you all in the next video. So thank you for watching and see you soon.